things are not going well.
The people coming out now don't even really know that, kind of know the difference or the way things were done before.
They were never good old days.
We have been bred to be competitive and oftentimes not collaborative.
We have to feel that there's a human aspect.
And there's that dangerous middle ground.
Really only 6 to 8% of the total healthcare spend.
Everything's electronic. They can already tell who I am, what I do, what I have.
You had to get the highest scores on a board. This is our big fight.
I confess in every situation.
It's like the world against primary care.
Patients would heal much faster.
So there's a problem here, right?
And the tagline says,
I'm shocked.
we got all our venting out. There's a lot of,
I think we just
it
got
got
started.
serious really fast.
I'm shocked. I mean, where do I even begin?
Hi, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of
The Six.
I have
Our Sixers.
sitting with me today virtually once again. So exciting. I asked before we came on if everyone was excited, and every single one gave a thumbs up. So that's really exciting. Okay. Guys, as always, we want short introductions. So one-liners, taglines, whatever you can, pull that is quick. So Bryant Gantworker, want to go first?
Sure. Brian Gantworker here again. I'm a private practice neurosurgeon here in Los Angeles, California, originally from Chicago. Been out here about 14 years, solo practice for 13 or 12, and do mostly spine, but also concussion and normal pressure, hydrocephalus, and really happy and proud to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Regina Drews?
Regina Drews. I'm an integrative cardiologist and digital health entrepreneur. And I've been doing this for about 5+ years in that interesting career vertical. I call it door number 2. Originally I'm just a bread and butter, traditional so-called non-invasive cardiologist, academically trained, residing in New York area. I'm a mom of 3, and I also have a very cute dog. And that's that. Very excited to be here.
Thank you. Who else thinks of Price is Right when she said door number 2? All right. Dr. Alejandro Badia, your turn.
Yeah, Alejandro, I'm an orthopedic hand surgeon in Miami, trained in New York and Pittsburgh. I've been in solo practice 15 years, and I am a reluctant healthcare entrepreneur trying to actually make a difference.
Fantastic. And you are. Okay, Dr. Franchelle Hamilton, you're next in the order of the pictures I'm seeing.
Hello, Franchelle Hamilton. I am also private practice, bariatric surgeon, also board certified in obesity medicine, and do other things also, like everybody here. I am founder and CEO of NeuroSwitch Weight Loss. I do educational courses, author, also have 4 kids, and I've been in private practice for about 13 years. Glad to be here.
Welcome, Dr. Bradley Block, last but not least.
Brad Block. I'm a private practice otolaryngologist on Long Island with ENT and Allergy Associates, the best ENT and allergy practice in the country. And I also am the host and creator of the Physician's Guide to Doctoring podcast, where we cover everything we should have been learning while we were memorizing Krebs cycle.
Okay.
Worst, by the way, Krebs cycle was the worst.
Yeah, it's so funny you said that because I don't know if I'm going to flash it tonight, but one of the posts is about like, not necessarily a Krebs cycle, but like the stuff that we learned back in school. So if I find it, I'll actually bring it up because it's relevant. Okay. Is everyone ready?
Yes.
Wait. Okay, go.
And to recap to those of you at home, we're going to be basically showing, posts from social media and just, dissecting them, having fun, being serious, being light, just whatever comes to mind. That's what makes the show really great. As always, attribution to the person who actually created the post is on the post itself, whether it's from Instagram or Twitter or anywhere else. And that is all. Without further ado, let's share the screen.
3 people on the left are actors. They've been briefed to stand or sit when they hear this. Everyone else that's brought in is a genuine shortlisted applicant. They've been given no instructions other than to fill out their forms. My team and I were secretly watching from another room.
If you're listening to this through a podcast or just looking on and confused, basically you're looking at people that are entering the room and unaware of the project. They're looking at their peers and they are standing up because their peers are standing up too.
The more socially compliant a person is, the more they're likely to look to others for signs of how to behave.
This is going to be your spot.
And the more people, the greater the pressure to join in. In this case, whether to stand or sit.
Again, same thing, follow blindly.
Those people that didn't follow the crowd were removed. I think actually it was Amy, sadly.
Amy. Okay.
Here they're removing the person who is questioning the action.
Once we had a full house, we got rid of the actors, leaving us with a room full of compliant people standing up and sitting down, even though nobody told them to do this.
Okay, so we're calling this social compliance. Now, I'm sure that there's a lot of thoughts going through your minds, and I would love to just hear them in general. But in terms of a prompt, I mean, what does this insinuate where our society is concerned? And is today different than it was in the past? So whoever wants to take it away first can go.
I'll start. I mean, this is evolution. We're tribal creatures. We travel in packs. And if you were to do something to get removed from the tribe, it meant certain death. And so this is in our genes, right? And this is why being embarrassed feels so strong, right? This is why people are afraid to sometimes put themselves out there and do something differently, because the sense of rejection is so deep that, you know, because previously it meant certain death. So I mean, social compliance, I don't appreciate that term, because basically what they do is they taught humans can be taught without words. And that's what they did. They taught people the structure of their setting without having to teach them. So these people were social compliant. They were also quick learners on what the pattern was around them. So I think social compliance has a certain connotation about it, but you could also choose different words that I can't think of right now that would also spin it in a more positive light.
So this is super interesting because, first of all, I didn't even know that social compliance is a term that exists. But I'm listening to a great book. It's called 7 Triggers to Yes. And it's about the science of persuasion. And so the author, who is actually has done a lot of work, you know, in consulting, business consulting, teaching people how to negotiate, educates companies how to be more persuasive with their products to get clients and so on. He talks about how when you give a person a specific behavior that they can copy without thinking about it too much, there is a memory, and sort of goes back to what Brad is saying, wired in our amygdala, in our reptilian brain, that gives us a sense of comfort and well-being, right? We feel that we can copy something, we don't have to think about it, we sort of don't have to do the heavy lifting of cognitive work, trying to figure out, is it right, is it wrong? You know, we can just accept it by copying this behavior. It's wired in our amygdala from time immemorial. It helped us survive or thrive. And he actually, this particular author, recognizes this as one of the 7 triggers, that if you give a person something that is fairly easy for them to do, amygdala will say, hey, that's pretty cool. I don't need to think about it. And I think this is what we're actually seeing, right? We're seeing the amygdala on full display. They're not thinking about it. They're just doing it, and that's that. So, I do think we have amygdala situation here.
Anyone else want to tackle this?
Well, this reminds me of the psych experiments that were conducted many times in the 60s and 70s. A lot of them were done
Milgram.
at Harvard.
Milgram.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And some of them were very destructive. I mean, it certainly damaged Ted Kaczynski, led him to, send mail bombs, etc. But what came to mind with me is physicians behaving like lemmings and in terms of hearing that bell and doing. And I think that the healthcare infrastructure has turned us a bit into that, where they've gotten us to fall in line and just follow behaviors without really questioning them. And so I know that it's certainly rooted in our amygdala, but I personally found it a little bit disturbing that people were conforming that much. I mean, if I'm filling out an application like that and I'm sitting down, I'm going to sit down. If somebody else wants to stand, that's fine. But it's just I found it interesting.
I think that's easy to say when you're on the observer side and know what the experiment is.
Yeah.
I think when you're on the other side, you might think, oh, I may have missed that instruction.
That's right.
I wasn't there. I showed up a little late. They were here before me, so they must have heard something that I didn't.
True.
When we have the information, it's we're in a different position.
Very true. Very true.
I'm gonna jump in here, Brian. I'm gonna let you go. I don't usually weigh in. It's just I'm thinking back to what I think is 2 episodes ago when we were talking about those whatever generation it was that has those words that we didn't know. I forgot even the words. What were like some of the words?
Sus. We talk about sus. Remember
And
that?
what was the lie word?
No cap.
No cap.
Yeah, no cap. Right. And I was thinking the other day as I was driving, see, this is how cool the 5 is that we stimulate. But I was thinking when I was driving, like, okay, so one person said it. Maybe their friend said it in one high school or in one school. But how did the rest of the world suddenly, like, who is influential enough to literally influence our nomenclature? And that really kills me too, is similar to this, where why did a word suddenly become lie? You know what I mean? Okay, Brian, you go.
Well, I mean, I think this is sort of experiment that's time immemorial. I don't think there's anything modern about it at all. I mean, you guys are talking about the amygdala, which is one of the most ancient. It's really the limbic system that does this, but it's socialization. It's contextualized learning. Just think of it this way, the people that are there, you got to understand what the context is, right? They're there to apply for something. So they're going to do whatever it takes to get in there. Just like you're in the operating room when you're a medical student and you want to go into general surgery. Are you going to hold hook, or are you going to complain about and ask why you have to hold the retractor? What are you going to do?
Hold
Okay,
up.
you're going to hold the retractor. I mean, you're going to laugh when the attending laughs, and you're going to laugh at his or her jokes, even though they're whatever. So, I mean, it's one of these things where, yes, don't forget, we're socialized animals, but in medicine especially, there's a lot of desire to sort of toe the party line and nod in agreement during conference and do all the things you got to do. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, it's whatever you got to get to, right? I want to get through residency, so I'll laugh the stupid jokes and I'll, change the dressing with, 2 sets of sterile gloves, even though it doesn't make a difference. Although I do change dressings the first time with sterile gloves. So, I mean, these are things I've learned in practice myself, over time. So yeah, you do have to toe the party line, especially if they have something that you want, like here's the Happy Meal, you're gonna stand up and sit down wherever they want you to. Now, granted, there's a line that we all get to, right? Like, I'm not going to do that because it doesn't make sense, or personal beliefs, or I think that's dangerous. But I think, I think this is kind of a banal thing, and it's like it's okay to stand up and sit down, especially if it's not going to hurt anybody. 1, 2, it's not going to hurt you, and 3, they have something that you want. You're going to, jump up and down, do jumping jacks if you have to. So I don't think this is some sort of seditious conspiracy type video. It's just demonstrating something that's very common that we have to do, that anybody has to do, especially in medicine, in order to get to where you want to get to. They have a job you want, you're going to stand up and sit down when the bell rings.
That's a good point, Brian, but I'm trying to bring up a greater point that we finished organic chemistry. We got in, we passed the boards, we did all of this. And what I'm saying is that the behaviors that you're seeing in such a simple video are continue amongst our colleagues because of exactly what you said. We wanted to conform, but that continues to, to no end, to our detriment. That's the only thing that I'm thinking of. But I agree, with this video, it's a very benign sort of event, but it
Well,
just symbolizes something to me. That's all.
Yeah, I'll play devil's advocate because I actually wrote a book about curiosity in the sense of weight loss, and so I've always been very curious. When I saw that video, I was like, I would be the girl that got removed. I'm like, you know what I'm saying? Because I talk about this, and I'm actually applying for a TED to talk about the power of curiosity. And you're a neurosurgeon. I do a lot of neuroscience. So my first degree was psychology, and so I apply a lot of that to weight loss. And I see a lot of people who follow these trend diets, right? It's just like Atkins. So everybody does Atkins, low fat, everybody, like at what point is people start questioning, wait a minute, that ain't, that may not be working, or why is everybody doing this? I was always the one that was like, if it was kind of dumb, I'm like, why is everybody doing this? And to your point, Brian, I was in my chairman's office a lot, but we are like the best of friends now, you know what I'm saying? And during general surgery, and he like loves me because I was always asking why. And I think it's that curiosity, which I also think is innate to a lot of people, to say why. A lot of the innovators, I'm a big innovator fan. So I loved like Apple's invention. Like I follow all of these people, Tesla, like I'm a fan of Tesla, honestly, like all of these people who I feel like were kind of before their time, and I feel like those people, those innovators, probably would have not stood and sat down. I mean, they're the people that are kind of thinking out the box and going a different way.
Well, I would push back on that because I was in the chairman's office a lot because I was the person that asked why constantly. Okay. So don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I think you have a greater goal in mind, right? So obviously if now you guys are generalizing a lot, which I sort of want us to avoid doing, but we're kind of drawing strange parallels here. But so, I mean, if you're talking about standing up and sitting down, that's just standing up and sitting down, right? So, you're doing standing up and sitting down just to get through a job application. But if you're talking about like following a diet, that's something that's very complicated and multi-layered, right? So you're going to take that into your box, you're going to shake it around. Does that make sense? And you may just toss it out. I mean, I've dealt with many issues that I just sort of like, I don't follow trends. I don't follow influencers. I don't really follow anybody. I've just done my own thing my entire career. So I'm just saying that if you have something very basic that you can do without violating any moral, ethical principles, like standing up, sitting down, that's okay. But if somebody asks you, like, I need you to prescribe this medication because it's going to do X, Y, and Z, I would just be really cautious into saying, well, that's just what we're doing, and this is symbolic of what that means. I don't think that's what that means. I think you're kind of underestimating critical thinking skills of physicians. Now, granted, the barriers are much lower now to do sort of like lemming type behavior. But, let's be honest, it really, I think we have to be cautious to draw too many parallels here with people who are just willing to comply to get something done that they want, like something very basic, versus like something much more sinister, significant, or that violates personal and ethical boundaries. I think we're smarter than that. So I just want to sort of throw that word of caution. I was the guy who was in the office a lot, but we're good now. But I would just say, like, we have to look at this in terms of gray and not sort of look at something like a sinister allegory for this current state of affairs in medicine. But I totally see what all you are saying, but believe me, sometimes you just have to go along just to get through and be your own thing. That's what I had to do. I had to go along with it, say, yes, that sounds good. I'll close this way and do whatever you want to. And I just did whatever the hell I wanted to when I was done, and it worked out fine. Just saying, you could be the one on the down low who does whatever you need to do to get through the day, and then do your own thing at the end. That's the best part. It's like, okay, I did your way. Now I'm going to do it my way. Thanks very much. It's nice to know you. That's kind of how I did things. That's just my 2 cents.
I have social anxiety, so I totally would have been standing up and sitting down because I would have been looking around going, wait, what am I supposed to be doing right now? Oh, crap. All right. No, I didn't get that instruction. All right. So, okay, everybody's standing. Okay, great. Okay, now I'm going to sit. Just because that's how I make it through like social experiences.
Yeah, it's kind of like being in temple or church, right? You're going to stand up during, everyone to stand up, you're going to stand up during certain times, and you're going to sit down during certain times. I mean, that's not terrible. I mean, you're
Or
going to stand
not.
up because, yeah, I mean, you know, if you just,
Yeah.
to me,
It's
that's what
good
the first thing I thought
exercise.
of.
They're
Yeah, first thing I thought
exercising.
of was being in temple. Like you got to, everybody standing up. Okay, am I supposed to stand up now? Okay, everybody stands up. You know, depends on what your denomination is or whatever. But that's kind of how I looked at it. Like, okay, we're standing up for this one. Okay, that sounds good. Let's stand up for this one.
Okay, we got everyone's opinions. I love it. We didn't all agree on everything, but that's what makes this so much fun. Okay, let's move on to the next one.
Bro, der Patient hat es leider nicht geschafft. Erzählst du das der Familie?
Ja, ich habe Support an, nur eine kleine Minute.
I'm sorry, don't leave me.
Hey, I am going to
Find this stuff.
Yeah, what's that last one?
Where do you find this data? This is like, oh my goodness.
now. I am not going to give a prompt here. I'm just going to get your takes on obviously the message of this video and what the implication could be. I mean, I'll go ahead and say it, but for social media and for creating videos and for being in healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. Anyone have like a knee-jerk, gut reaction to that?
Wow. I'll go first, I guess. I mean, this one's definitely not as banal as the last one was. So first off, I mean, we've all had patients who died on us or something terrible happened. I would think if we've all been in practice for about the same amount of time. So we can all kind of talk about these conversations that we've had, these breaking bad news type things. But it is concerning a little bit that somebody would record a video to break it to the patient that their person didn't make it, and they're sort of trying to false emote some sort of reaction. And then not only that, there's also the offloading part that I didn't like. The person that came out of the operating room, they're speaking German. So they came out of the operating room, basically said, the patient didn't make it. Can you tell them? It's like, what? No, you're the guy, no, that's your job. That's your job. So like offshoring that to the intern is terrible. Although I think we've all had to sort of do that, break bad news when your chief is busy in the operating room and, they got to do something. And I've had to do that before. I've had to do that during service time, but yeah, I do sometimes.
You know what I'm going to do, Brian? I'm going to interrupt you to just make sure that I give context. I think it's maybe really hard when you see it once to really kind of get what's going on. Let me give a quick context so that everybody is on the same page.
We'll be right back. SoMeDocs is building incredible conferences and courses on some of the most asked for topics in health and healthcare. Take a look at this writing course.
I am here to tell you, you will use this book pitch for far more than talking to agents and publishers.
What should we watch out for? What resources are there to help us? How can we handle this?
I will be sharing about how I built a narrative medicine curriculum for our fellows and why building such a curriculum has been really essential to offer a space for diastole.
If you're looking to find your voice on the page, this is the workshop for you. You may have a writing project in mind, you may not, and you just are curious about getting creative.
We'll cover 7 strategies from telling it slant to magic realism and surrealism to meaning making and telling the story head on.
We're going to talk about all the key elements your story needs to ensure its best beginning.
We'll explore how to get started in book publishing and turn your passion and expertise into a compelling book proposal, how to pitch an editor, and what to expect from the publishing process.
You'll learn how to write a personal essay that readers want to read and editors want to publish by doing just that.
Access this conference on writing for healthcare professionals exclusively on SoMeDocs.
Yeah, I do sometimes.
You know what I'm going to do, Brian? I'm going to interrupt you to just make sure that I give context. I think it's maybe really hard when you see it once to really kind of get what's going on. Let me give a quick context so that everybody is on the same page. I'm going to have to do it anyway in the podcast version of this because people won't be able to actually see. So what that reel is about is that the original reel is whether it's a doctor or nurse, it's somebody that is really upset about having lost someone in healthcare. But they're taking the time to sort of set the camera up and kind of like, then after, they set the camera up to sort of like go into like weeping so the second part is a bit of a, almost like a dark comedic take on it. They're
like a mockery.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're basically going, let me recreate this and show to them how ridiculous it is that you're being told like something bad happened and you're sort of taking the time to adjust your camera. So I just want to make sure we got the context before.
Yeah, I was gonna get to, I was trying to like going through the layers. Like the first one is the mockery, and then it's mockery of mockery, really. So it's like very meta because, the first one is, I do worry about sometimes this overly demonstrative, emotional outpourings in some of these videos. And I understand people feel a certain way and they want to express themselves. And I don't know, maybe it's just me being a Luddite, but I don't feel like that sort of emotion is something you shouldn't try to make a meme out of it. And that's what I'm really concerned about. It's like, this is not a meme. This is not something that you want to put on pause and get the lighting right and get the pointing thing and the stupid text in the front of it. This is something that's super personal, super powerful, and really gut-wrenching. And I feel like the mockery of the mockery is kind of funny, but the main mockery of the first thing that the nurse or physician or whoever that was, therapist or whatever did, yeah, that kind of makes my stomach twist in a certain way that I just don't like. So I don't, you guys all have your own feelings on this, but I think that kind of powerful emotion, something's very personal, and you shouldn't try to put it on videos for likes, clicks, and clout. It's just kind of gross.
Anyone else?
Honestly, if you want my opinion, I think it's just stupid and done in very poor taste. It's simply, it's an attempt at trying to be something cerebral, something that they're certainly not. Is just one of those silly things that happens on the internet or on social media. And that's why social media in many ways is probably not the greatest forum, at least not for physicians, if there truly want to build a community or find people who understand them or bridge the gap, honestly, between the patients and the doctors in terms of communication. So it's one of those things that it's garbage, unfortunately.
The first or the second one?
My opinion.
Regina, the first one or the second one? Like the original one or the one that's like posting about it?
Yes, thank you. That's a good.
The first one, I honestly don't understand if the first one was just primarily done as a setup for the second one. I think it's that second one is certainly, in my opinion, is garbage. So I guess the first and the second one together, because I think the whole premise of it that trivializing the fact that people die in our care, right, and showing that it's some sort of a farcical spectacle where physicians or nurses or whoever they are go in front of a camera pretending to be completely heartbroken. Honestly, in many ways, I think saying it's stupid is mild. It's actually offensive. So, so this is, it's offensive to everyone who has ever worked in healthcare and had faced the situation where people die. And I know we all did, during time of our careers. And it's offensive to people who lost a family member, due to medical illness. So
Actually jump in here and redirect the conversation. I think it's taken a turn that I did not mean it to go. So I think we all agree, obviously, that death is bad. I think we're all physicians. We went in here. I think the point that I guess I was trying to kind of bring up here is there's two parts to this reel. There's the first part that is a reel, right? It's a reel that was created by a healthcare worker crying in front of the camera because of a loss of some sort, right? I don't know if someone died. I don't know if something bad happened. Whatever it was recreated. The second part is making a social media commentary to some degree on the first part, saying, well, how can you why are you posting this if you're sort of like having to, it's obviously not real and heartfelt because you had to adjust your camera to prepare it. So again, I just want to make sure that we kind of reground what we talk about, because we all agree that death is bad. We all agree how horrible it is when we either lose someone or things go bad. But the question is more kind of the conversation I wanted kind of to take this in the direction of is, are we using social media the right way? Are we using it in the wrong ways sometimes? Have some people kind of taken it overboard to some degree? And how can we as smart individuals in healthcare kind of reel it back in?
Well, I think there are people who are compelled to share different parts of their day, and that is kind of become the satire. Is, you know, what did I have for breakfast and what did I do? And people, and for some reason, people are interested in following this. I have a patient. It's a family, and they put their lives on there, and it's funny because I did surgery. I think it was on the father. I don't know if his shoulder, and you know, fortunately, he did very well. But that wasn't interesting to them. What was interesting to them was what they ate that for lunch, and to just put those emotions out there. I see social media as being able to communicate something we can learn, something we can enjoy. I don't see anything that's positive about just expressing emotion about that type of event. I'm not sure where the place is in social media for that, but obviously there is. We're all different people.
I think we all kind of understood the assignment, as it were. I mean, Dr. Drews and I think are on the same page that the mockery is also bad because this person obviously is upset. But the first place, you know,
I don't know. I think they may not be, and I think that's where the joke was. So I think something that I talk about on my podcast is how to use humor, and you know, the goal of humor is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable, right? As long as you're making jokes, right? Dr. Glockenflecken is the best at that because he is always punching up. He is never punching down, and he's always funny. And it's really hard to be funny in that situation, right? So the question, I think, is that second part: are they punching up? Are they comforting the afflicted? Was this person actually, like, did something actually happen? Or is this all just a performance? And even if something did happen, are they then making a mockery of the bad of the loss by turning it into a performance? So I think the second one, you know, was it appropriate and funny? You have to ask yourself, well, was that first one real? And even if it was real, is it inappropriate for them to be turning it, somebody, you know, that type of loss, into something performative?
It was a commentary also. Like, to me, it was a comment in the same way that I could write a commentary for the New York Times based on something that happened with my opinion. It was a commentary with again, that's the way I interpret it, is a made up situation where they just kind of were like, here's what we're seeing in this situation, you know, and to me, it stimulates an incredible conversation to have.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if it were your news, if it were your family's news, if you just lost a family member, would you feel comfortable, for example, knowing that the person who just delivered you the news, like, had to pause for a minute, right? To like turn the camera on and to sort of pose. Again, it might be real, it might not. I don't know the situation, but that's where, you know, good commentary from our, you know, side of things would really help here to kind of give context on, you know, how we interpret these, which are becoming more and more common.
Some things should not be used for clicks and likes. Some things should not be turned into content.
Thank you.
And this seems like one of those situations.
Absolutely. Especially because it strikes me as very performative. It's different, you know, during the worst parts of COVID, we did have people sort of taking their masks down. I think about Christina Johns, you know, she used to have these things where she would sort of go to the closet and she would talk to people about how important it is to do something or something she experienced. And that was heartfelt. That was engaging. That's cool, especially if it's somebody like, God forbid, somebody you lost a patient or someone's super sick. Then, you know, talk to people. Don't just have a meme or some sort of you have like a banner and then you're almost like, she's not dancing, but almost feels like she's dancing. Like, it's almost performative in a way that feels gross and feels wrong, and it feels disconnected and almost ventriloquy or puppeteering. Like, it's just, you can use puppeteering and performance art. I love ballet. I love performance art. it makes, I saw something on Frida Kahlo, and there's this thing, like when she had a terrible accident, she actually hurt her spine really badly. And they had like this picture of this vertebrae, like it was really like dorking out big time. And I loved it, but it was interpretive art, right? This was performance art. That was not performance art. That was something done for attention. And that's what's gross. That's, I guess, the defining line. It's one thing to sort of have a performance and express it, but that was a performative thing. It wasn't artistic. It was for attention. And that's what makes, to me, was what crosses the line of what. And the second thing, also, it's like, it's cool. They're making fun of it. And I don't think they're punching up or punching down. I think they're kind of punching like this, where obviously I think they're on equal footing. So it's a mockery, but it's also the first place, the mockery occurring in the first place was gross. And the mockery is not great either. So I don't know. I like what Bradley said. That kind of encapsulates certain things, don't put it out there for attention. Please don't.
Okay, it looks like we've beaten this to a pulp. Let's to the next clip. The next one is a tweet. I'm going to read it. It's by Dutch Rojas. You'd never see a world where lawyers weren't allowed to own law firms. They can pay each other for case referrals. They can do whatever they want. They own the government. Nicely played, lawyers, nicely played. For example, 30% of House members and 51% of senators have, and then there's a show more button, which I did not show here because I wanted to really just kind of compress it into one, tweet that we can see. But there was someone that replied, Humane Healthcare for something, I can't see, but their handle is Lighthouse DPC. And they say, a lawyer here told me a cheap lawyer costs $350 per hour. Average week for a physician is at least 50 hours. Let's assume a physician works 48 hours. A physician is worth as much as a cheap lawyer. At $350 per hour, that's $840,000 a year for a cheap physician. There's a huge disconnect. So I am going to unshare, and we're going to call this Payment is to Lawyers As. And the number one question that I'm going to pose to everyone is, should doctors be able to own hospitals? And then the second question is going to be, does an hourly charge make sense in healthcare as it does in law? So whoever wants can take that away.
This is radioactive.
That I keep
All
jumping
right,
into.
I think that surgeons own ASCs, and I'm in a process now to claw back our ownership from a corporate partner that we thought would be very helpful with bringing good contracts, all of that, and that has not transpired. I think that we need to have business people that work with us. We need occasionally attorneys to draw up contracts, et cetera. But I think we've become they've taken too much of that pie, where we've been relegated to almost being just cheaper labor. And the reality is, in healthcare, I mean, what is it without us? It's nothing. And yet all these cottage industries, I'm about to write an article about this, about I don't know if it happens to all of you, but how many emails a day do you get about people who want to do your billing for you, people who want to do the scrubbing of contracting, people who want to sell you an EMR? And I'm thinking, if all these people have all these emails, that means they're doing pretty well if they want to go after your business. And yet I don't see, the average pediatrician doing very well. And $350 an hour is a cheap lawyer. I'm dealing with a healthcare lawyer now who's, $840 an hour. It's absurd. And I don't see us catching up. So I'm not sure what's going to have to happen. But yes, the first step would be allowing us to own, and in many states you can own your own hospital. So I think in many of the states we have to fight to have that control again. We should be able to control our own destiny and patient care with oversight. I've always said that we need to have oversight. There's bad apples, but we've had too much taken away from us.
I think this is a great point, Alejandro, but the way that I see it, and I'm sort of going to reframe what you said, Dana, is that it's not so much about whether physicians should be allowed to own hospitals or ambulatory surgical care centers, or hey, even their own practices, right? There is Stark Law, there are a lot of different regulations. It's about the fact that physicians have year after year, decade after decade, have ceded their autonomy to third parties. And, initially those third parties may have been powerful insurance carriers, and they still are. Now we have new players in the mix. We have Medicare Advantage firms, some of them owned by physicians, for example, who put themselves supposedly out there with an eye toward helping patients and making patients lots so much better and giving seniors opportunities that they would not have had otherwise. But it's simply a different supply chain of reimbursement flow. It doesn't really make patients' lives better, as we know the data really shows. So to me, sort of the fundamental divide is that how come the law profession had managed to manage itself? And it's not to say that lawyers don't get burnout. I have quite a few patients who are attorneys, and I'm actually speaking in front of the master group of attorneys, I think, in 2 weeks, on anti-aging and health preventative stuff. But it's not that attorneys don't have the burnout, but they have an opportunity to guide their own destiny. And we as doctors have lost the opportunity to do that, even though some of us, and I'm sure all of us here are, we're doing well, we're comfortable, but the value that we bring versus how externally that value is being perceived and reimbursed, they are a complete mismatch. And, and we lost, the track where we could govern our own destiny. How does one get it back? This is what, to me, the DPC tweet is all about, right? It's a huge discrepancy between what other educated professional people are capable of doing and what doctors are capable of doing.
But Regina, we've shifted. The point is the same amount of expenditure still there in healthcare, and I would argue it's getting more and more expensive, but it's not coming to the people who are actually delivering it.
We'll be right back. Check out our new Obesity Medicine Conference.
I will be talking about anti-obesity medications. We are going to cover everything from phentermine to Zepbound and all the medications in between, and help you understand the pros and cons of different anti-obesity medications, which patient is a fit for which, how to troubleshoot side effects, everything you need to know to comfortably prescribe these medications.
I'll share why working with and supporting parents and caregivers is crucial for effective, sustainable weight management in children.
I'm going to make a case for healthy sleep related to nutrition, exercise, and behavioral change. I'm also going to talk about how sleep problems can sabotage anti-obesity medications and bariatric surgery outcomes.
We are going to go beyond the BMI and uncover the truth about body composition and how to measure it.
We are in the need to be creative, to get outside of the box and to try new approaches using the technology that we have in front of us.
First, why should you be jumping into it right now? What care models are best? And how do you increase ancillary revenues in this model?
In this talk, we'll delve into the many factors contributing to excess weight during the perimenopausal period. We'll also explore evidence-based strategies for managing the weight gain, from lifestyle interventions to pharmacotherapy.
Neurobehavioral approach, I think, is going to be the key, along with the other tools that we use to treat weight loss in order for weight loss to finally be sustainable.
Some of the history of obesity medicine, current controversies, standards of care, and what the future might hold for obesity medicine. There are lots of exciting innovations coming down the pike.
We'll explore how social determinants of health, including economic stability, education, healthcare access, and neighborhood environments, play a critical role in obesity.
We will begin by discussing the current evidence around the use of plant-predominant dietary patterns, including describing what comprises a whole food plant-based way of eating. We will end with a brief cooking demonstration.
Discover the fusion of education and practical application in promoting healthy dietary patterns through culinary medicine.
Soak it all up virtually, either live or at your own pace through recordings, exclusively through SomiDocs, the healthcare innovation hub that's looking to make things simpler. Now back to our show.
But Regina, we've shifted. The point is the same amount of expenditure still there in healthcare, and I would argue it's getting more and more expensive, but it's not coming to the people who are actually delivering it. So every point you made is that we're shifting it, and I think that we partly allowed that. The question is, how can we claw that back? And that's what I find, and that's where Brian, maybe, and Bradley, that was what I was trying to say with the people standing and sitting in that room in the first vignette. That's kind of the point that I know I was extrapolating, but that's what my concern is that we become sort of lemmings and allowed that. And I think that we have to have more rebellion. Unfortunately, it's just we've got to do it now. Otherwise, it's just getting worse and worse. And I'm really worried about the future.
We're trained in academia, right? And so in academia, they work in hospitals. They work for academic systems. And so we're trained by people who, work for employers. We're not getting trained by many people who have experience in private practice.
That's a good point.
I think this generation of physicians see private practice, either it's looked down upon, right?
Always has been.
Less than. And
Always has been.
Yeah. And so on top of that, there's this nebulousness of it where you think like your next paycheck may not be coming because you've got to worry about all this stuff, whereas it's safer in these other healthcare systems. So because they're not getting exposure, they go into what they know, what's familiar, right? The devil you know is better than the devil you don't. And so then they end up staying for large healthcare systems, academics, because they're just not exposed to that stuff. So, that's part of the problem. The other part of the problem is, on top of, lawyers making $840,000 a year, I think that number's a little off, right? I don't think that lower cost lawyers. No. Brian, I see you shaking your head. There are plenty of lawyers that are making a ton more, but I don't think the lower end is like. Yes, there's plenty making is making a lot less than that. Is that physicians owning hospitals, which is Donna's her main question here is, should we be allowed to? And I think all of us are going to say, like, of course we should. To Alejandra's example, like when we run ASCs, they run cheaper and more efficiently, right?
And safer.
So without these conflicts of interest, yes, there are the Stark laws. They have a reason we shouldn't be getting kickbacks. I don't think we should be making money from referrals like to a specific surgeon so that surgeon stays busy and then we make money off of that. I think we do get into slippery slopes that we shouldn't. But like, why I do not understand why physicians can't. Like, why was that law even made? I can tell you though, one thing we're really bad at is advocacy, and one thing that lawyers are really good at is advocacy. Why? Because they're lawyers. They understand how the laws work. They understand how to influence them, to bend them to their will.
Great point.
And we are trying to help people. We're trying to heal people. So we don't understand the law and we don't leverage the law. And this is where, not enough of us are members of the AMA. The AMA doesn't necessarily support us in the way we should. There's like another, other AMA out there. I forget what it's called, but it's like really right wing. And so that one, we don't really have many choices for, other than our own specialty societies, for how we can influence this stuff. And that's a problem.
Well, because I think to us, Bradley, you have a podcast about what doctors didn't learn because they were too busy learning about Krebs cycle. This was exactly what happened to us. We never learned how to advocate or how to build businesses, right? How to build businesses or how to lobby, right? And, you're saying physicians should or should not own the hospitals. In some states, physicians are allowed to own the hospitals, and they do. And these are for-profit institutions. Now, there are other states, for example, like New York, that prohibit corporate practice of medicine, right? Prohibited in New York and California. So technically, physicians cannot really own the hospitals, but neither can the corporate entity. But they find a way to bypass
get around
this
it.
and sort of, right?
Yeah, they get around it.
Exactly.
It's easy.
Kind of give a turnaround.
That's
So it's very complicated, I think, because in my case, I always say follow the money, and you'll find the answers to all these questions.
So I've been in advocacy for about 12 years. I've been to DC several times, maybe about a half dozen times, talking to Congress people and senators people. It's complicated, but here's the bottom line. What the people who make the laws that affect us, they get a digested version of things, right? They get sort of a Reader's Digest version of what the issues are and what the bills say. That being said, they're in turn influenced by what we call policy wonks. Now, policy wonks are people who work for think tanks like the American Enterprise Institute, the Cato Institute, the Brookings Institute. These people are paid by insurance companies to tell a story about what doctors do that is bad, right? Bad apples, they're rich, they're making too much money, and they sort of lie about how much of our fees make up the GDP of the total healthcare spend. Those lies have been carried on so long that they become inculcated into CMS and HHS. And so that's why the lies keep going, and why advocacy is so small is because we feel helpless. We don't give enough money to our political action committees. That being said, you should always call out people who make bad policy things. And I can give you a list of names that I won't talk about here on this podcast because I don't want to get any backlash, and I can tell you who those people are. But I've interacted with both of those people, Dutch and Lighthouse DPC. They're very good advocates and they make good points. But the reason things don't ever get better is because they're sort of an inside track, a slicked rail, if you will, of lies being told by the insurance companies through their policy wonks back to Congress. So that's why that keeps refracting, and we can't get anywhere because we can't interrupt that gravy train of money and influence that keeps going in. So all you can do is stand up and fight. Now, this is one of the situations where you should totally push back against the lies. When you see it on Twitter, social media, it's lies. Because a lot of times what the wonks will do, like a perfect example, the reason why that so many lies get told about our fees is because they're taking what our charge master says, right, not what we actually get paid. And this is the greatest lie. I asked why I got into it with one of them. It's like, by the way, what did you use as your benchmark for prices when you were talking to Congress? Oh, the invoice charges. I said, oh, okay. Did you use the invoice charges of what we actually get paid? Well, we just assumed you guys got 75% of what you charge. I swear to God, I almost like popped an aneurysm. I'm like, what? Are you joking with me right now? We get a third, if that, maybe 25% of what we actually invoice charge. That's why we have to have such high prices. It's like going into the dealership and paying sticker price. Nobody pays sticker price when you walk in the dealership, right? So the bottom line is these are lies that are told and perpetuated. This is why things don't get better, because nobody calls them out. So if you call them out, you'll start noticing too. If you ever call one of them out, because I've done this, guys and women from other institutes that are actually supposedly against each other will come for you. They will come for you. They will start, actually I've had, they insult me, and I just do like my Captain America meme, which means I can do this all day. That's one of my favorite ones. Like, come on, baby, let's dance anytime you want to. So you'll notice that when you start getting negative comments from the think tank people, you're doing something helpful to yourself and to doctors. And I'm just going to shut up because Franchelle, I'm sure, wants to talk.
Well, I was just going to say, Texas is one of the few states where physicians can still own hospitals. And I've been in ACSs, and hospitals. We had a big one called Forest Park. It was a big deal out here a few years ago. And so, but I will tell you, the powers that be, so to speak, do the best to tear down that. Even though they give us the power to own hospitals, they look for ways for us not to own hospitals. And so we've had several hospitals that shut down. And I'm big in American College of Surgeons, ASMBS, and same. I go to DC. We're going to DC next year. And I would say I've been on a lot of these things and talked to the senator, and they're all kids, right? They're like 19 and 20, taking down our request and then handing them over to the policy people. But I feel like they find ways, and even sitting in some of these meetings with American College of Surgeons, they're teaching a lot of these other younger people, private practice is dead. Like, I've heard that in meetings, like, private practice is dead. No one's doing, and I have to stand up and say, wait, I'm still, it's not dead. I'm still in, but they're being bought out. And a lot of the people coming up, to Bradley's point, they're not learning anything about private practice. I feel like I had to get almost like an MBA when I came out. And didn't want to go into academia. I mean, it was just so much to learn. And then the other hourly question that Dana had put out there about lawyers getting hourly, and anybody who's had to emails, if they have to go to the post office, like 5-minute emails, they charge for every little thing. And I will say, as the physician, they're trying to clump all of our services. I'm not sure, especially in surgery, where we do a surgery and it's one fee that gets paid for anybody who's accepted, and everybody's clawing at that fee. That's the most horrible thing, that they could have created. And so I don't know how many times I'm responding to patient emails, prescriptions need to be done. We have to go back and take a second look. We don't get paid. Like as a surgeon, we are 30-day, like everything that has to be done with this, we get one fee. And now we have to share under some insurances with the hospitalist that rounds on them, with the anesthesiologist, with the hospital, and we get one fee that covers all of our 30 days. And so I would say it would be nice to get a little bit hourly, maybe not. I mean, but you know, just throwing it out there, I would say that would be nice, but that is definitely not what the physicians get at all, not even close. So
Then the patients could talk as long as they want, right? Like you come to my office, you got an office visit, go ahead. We're on your time. Go ahead, talk. You don't have to feel rushed. It's going to be great. I'll listen to everything.
I'm going to move ahead to the next one, but I just want to point out how ironic it is when Bradley was talking about the being taught by the people that are in academia. It reminded me of that first reel with the people standing up and sitting down, right? Because we're kind of being taught by those people. And so we're kind of just following what we were shown. And so there is a lot of applicability of that first reel to just how medicine is going and why there's so many deficits in our, medical education on things that we could actually use. And that's part of what I'm doing with, or trying to do with SoMeDocs. I know each of us is trying to do it in different ways, but, to implement like a student section so that we can actually connect private practice physicians with these students and teach them things outside of their organizations. So time will tell. Okay, let's bring on the next one. And this is perfect for this episode. So here we go. So it's so funny because you mentioned the Krebs cycle and then Alejandro mentioned organic chemistry. So I thought it was the perfect. So that's the question about that reel is, it's funny, but also like, I mean, I don't want to say, do we need it? Because we probably do. I'm going to let you guys answer is, do we need it? And even if we need it, what can we change about this whole educational curriculum that lasts so many years?
We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, Donna Coriel from SoMeDocs. SoMeDocs has just newly released its Side Ventures series. It joins a stellar lineup of other fabulous video and podcast series, including Entrepreneurship in Healthcare, SoMeDocs Conversations, and more. In fact, we're working with our members to create more interesting and unique shows to share with you. But if you're interested in Side Ventures, we do also have a Facebook group that's been built just for doctors that are curious on what else. Check out the Facebook groups that we manage at doctorssocialmedia.com/our-facebook-groups. I'll see you there.
Back to our show.
Do we need it? And even if we need it, what can we change about this whole educational curriculum that lasts so many years?
I mean, I do have medical students that rotate with me and sometimes, and up until recently anyway, and it is sort of like, even when I go to meetings, and I like going to meetings just fine, but it's not a preferred activity. Because I always get the same question, how are you doing this? I don't understand. How can you be in private practice by yourself? I don't get it. And you always have to tell the same story and over again. It's like doing an interview for a book that you really didn't like that you wrote. So, I mean, it's like you get tired of being treated like a living fossil, like a coelacanth. But I just think we have to just we just have to help people understand that there's more than one way to practice medicine and it's not better or worse. And I try to express, and I have a group of, very, I would say conservative colleagues that are also academics that they just sort of like say stuff that, they actually complain about how, their university or their institution sort of does stuff. I'm like, well, I don't really have to deal with that because I'm not part of institutions. So you guys are really the ones that are part of the problem that you're complaining about, that I'm not even inside of that whole thing. So I just kind of got them thinking about, well, yeah, we need private practice because you need to be able to work differently. And plus, private practice, we're the safety net for the academic centers. So imagine a patient had an epidural abscess in their spine. They were losing function in their legs. Now imagine that the private practice surgeon didn't exist. And that person's sitting out an outlying hospital while they're becoming weaker and weaker and weaker. And they finally get to the Mecca, the institution, and they've lost everything. And they're now in Asia A, and they have zero function. And now they're toast, basically. They're not going to get better no matter what you do. So private practice should be taught to academic people that is a safety net. 1, 2, it allows for access. That's why private practice should not go away, even though the wonks and the people in Congress and HHS feel that we're bad and we shouldn't exist anymore. The bottom line is if we all on this call especially didn't exist, there'd be a lot of sick, unavailable doctors to patients who really, really need us, whether you're in an urban setting, rural setting, if you're in a metropolitan setting. You know, we're kind of there as sort of the front line. And if they want us to go away, that's fine. Or we can drop all the insurances and not see anybody in the emergency room. And then, you know, just unfortunately, those patients have to fend for themselves. It sounds terrible. And it sounds like I don't care, but I care a lot. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me that the solution that the people have come up with is, well, we'll just get rid of private practice docs and we'll just make everybody employed. It's going to be fine. And we'll bundle all the care and it's all going to save us money. But in fact, it just opens up more room for grift. It just opens up more room for grift and nonsense. So the very thing they're trying to tone down, they're actually going to like throw the valve wide open.
Let me ask this of everybody based on that reel. Thinking back to our medical education, did we actually need all of that organic chemistry when push comes to shove? That's kind of what I want to hear from you guys as well.
I feel like organic chemistry, we lost a lot of potential doctors because of organic chemistry. Like, I just feel like I had a lot of friends who came through, and if you don't pass you can't pass go, essentially. And so that was kind of the Achilles heel for a lot of potential medical personnel and doctors. And I'm not really, honestly, Krebs cycle, like I joke, I don't like it, but mitochondria, that's all pertinent, right? Like we get that, right? Mitochondria is very pertinent, all of that. Organic chemistry, like I don't know. And I went for, like, I loved engineering and meds, and I'm not really sure if that played any role in, you know, me helping patients or not. So it's almost weird. Like, I don't know what that particular course was there for. You get the other ones, biology, you know, chemistry 1, chemistry 2.
So did we ever use, realistically, like, we're not making the drugs, right? We're not going into pharmacology. We're medical doctors. Did we need, and again, maybe someone could argue that we need a teeny bit of it, but did we need to spend all of that time on chemistry, on organic chemistry, and on those things when we could have spent it on billing, private practice? So that's, I guess, my question to you. And if all of you agree, then I guess the question is, I am yet to find a medical doctor that says that all of that time spent in orgo or whatever, OChem, you know, I call it OChem, orgo, whatever they got, that it was worth it.
But if you do find that doctor, then that one doctor could have learned it later, right? They didn't need to, all of us don't need to learn everything. I don't know why me as an otolaryngologist had to spend time identifying the calcaneus. I really don't. Like gross anatomy, why I was dissecting the forearm. And I think the reason behind that is because
Now.
This is what I mean. No, but it makes more sense, Alejandro. It would make more sense for that time to be spent rather than you dissecting the head and neck as a future hand surgeon. That same amount of time, instead of dissecting the whole body, you get all the arms, right? And I get all the head. Like that makes more sense. So that I get a lot more practice now that I've chosen my specialty. But Brian, we have a finite amount of time.
I understand. I feel a different, I was a psych major in undergrad. Okay. So we had 3 different semesters of organic chemistry. In fact, they used to grade the papers with a crayon, so you couldn't change your scores. That's how crazy it was. I also, just as a side note, I thought I bombed my final exam, but they were off by 100 points because they didn't write down they didn't put my score correctly in the computer. And I had to find out right during wintertime. I had to traipse across the quad to get my score changed. But I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying a lot of, especially my attendings, when I was interviewing other residents for my spot when I was a chief, and this is what some of the other attendings said, is that they judged someone's ability to understand and to have the mental fortitude to get through residency if they could tolerate and get through organic chemistry, right or wrong. I'm just saying it's not that it's even the knowledge, it's the ability to survive and thrive in that environment because it's so utterly toxic. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying
It's funny. I heard the same thing from
Yeah.
someone your brother introduced me to
Yeah.
about medical education, that these
Yes.
are really gut courses.
Yes.
That if you can survive this material, then you can survive medical school. It's not
It's
to
a-
learn the material.
Right. It's a
just to see
hazing
if you can
ritual.
survive it. Yeah.
It's to see if you have what it takes, if you got the moxie or whatever you want to call it, to get through the mental challenges of medical school and then residency training, because it is super stressful. And it's again, stuff like like standing up and sitting down. You're like, why the hell are we learning this stuff? Well, that's kind of the weird mind screw of the whole thing. It's like, they're really not seeing if you can memorize toluene and how to make benzene ring reactions. That's not really what it's about. It's about, can this person make the mental gymnastics and tolerate the amount of material and the effort it takes to do well in it? Can they actually do it? Because that will be sort of an acid test.
That's fine, but can't you do it? Can't you haze with relevant information?
Yeah, exactly.
It would be nice. I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm saying we need a revamp for sure. I mean, me as private practice, believe me, we definitely need some other skill sets. I'm just saying that's why the vestigial organ exists. That's why it's still there.
That's a good point. Vestigial. So the way evolution happens is it's generally built on something that already exists. Like wings in bats and wings in birds are both, they both used to
That's
be
convergent.
hands.
Right.
They're
Convergent
not,
Yes.
but they're not, wings are not made de novo. Like dragons didn't exist. They don't have four legs and then two wings,
then
right?
wings,
So it's evolution is always built on something, or almost always built on something that already exists. And that's the same with medical education. You take the current system and you add to it. And it's very, very hard. It requires a lot of energy, same as evolution, to actually
buy-in.
remove something rather than just
And-
add something on top.
And you
so
need
we do.
buy-in. The other thing is you need buy-in. You need buy-in from program directors. You need buy-in from attendings. You need buy-in. They have to say, I'm going to accept this. And if so-and-so had a semester of organic chemistry and got a B-, that's okay. They're still going to be a good doctor. I challenge you guys to find a program director, a PD, who will look at somebody in medical school or residency who got a really bad mark in one of the basic sciences, biochem, biology, chemistry, organic chemistry. They're not really going to look so hot at them. And maybe it's not such a big deal anymore, but I will tell you that there's going to look kind of like, give you a bit of side eye if somebody did really poorly in one of those basic science courses, whether they understand it, why they feel that way or not. It's just sort of this weird socialized red flags. Like if somebody doesn't know or can't get through organic chemistry or physics, that they're not, quote, and I'm just saying this, it's not true, but they're, quote, not smart enough to be a doctor. You just have to
they
be
have
careful.
1,000 applications to go through.
I understand.
And this is a way for them to
Yes.
remove one or
Right.
two of them.
Correct.
And I
That's a
think
way to
that's
toss it.
why this is also why we don't innovate, by the way, because we do kind of lean on the evolution of the educational curriculum and such, and we can't make drastic changes even when drastic changes are needed. So what I guess I'm suggesting here to turn this episode in full circle is that we don't stand up and sit down like the other people, but what if we actually just sat and filled out our forms? Just to kind of make it analogous to that first reel is sometimes maybe, there should be someone that challenges the curriculum and says, do we really need organic chemistry or even chemistry? And can we not necessarily save the minds of our students, but like really teach them something that's relevant to 2024 and beyond and get them to be stronger, candidates for med school and beyond that and, survive in the real world.
Alejandro
But-
feels very validated right now.
But the question is when?
No, but
when
you know,
to do that. It's not just doing it, right? You have to know, because otherwise, if you do it right when you're sitting down or right when you walk in the room, you're not going to get very far. You have to kind of play the game a little bit. It's like Kobe Bryant when he used to play basketball. He would just hang back for 3 quarters. And then he would go freaking nuts the 4th quarter. He just open them up because that's how Kobe played. He worked super hard. He's the hardest working guy in the court, mad respect to him, but he just kind of hung back. He's like, hey, bro, you played a good game, and then he would just like score 30 points, just go completely unconscious. That's kind of what you have to do. Yeah, you don't have to, you got to stand up and sit down to get through the first 3 quarters, right? But if you don't have to comply anymore to get to the 4th quarter, and you're doing what you need to do to change things. You have to play the game a little while.
Challenge that. Because I know I would, but I'm trying not to talk.
I don't think we should be just technicians, and I think there's a lot of value in me, at least at one point, trying to learn the foramina and the skull so that I can have some conversation with both Bradley and Brian. And hopefully they know something about the forearm, and I know something about the heart and about, certainly general surgery. So I don't think that those experiences are lost. I think that the idea is to give us a broad education so that there can be some dialogue and connection. Otherwise, we're all going to be and the public is already complaining about that, right? Saying that we're all too specialized. So, I don't know how much change I want there, but I really like what you said, Dana, about making sure introducing more relevant courses, and there definitely needs to be business. There needs to be, there should be nutrition, right? At NYU, I had 1 hour of nutrition. That's absurd. But I think that there are changes in medical education. Some of you who are, closer to academia than I am, maybe can comment on it. But I think there is some significant pushes to changing medical education.
And to reiterate, it's less about the anatomy classes, because for some reason we keep going back to anatomy classes. I do think that anatomy is important, but we're talking about organic chemistry and chemistry. So again, yes, anatomy we can argue on like the number of arguments, whether, but we're on the first tier here. We're in OChem. And so maybe we get some students on the show next time, and when we're done with the season, and we can kind of chat with them.
Organic chem did teach you how to think a certain way, though. If you think about it,
couldn't we do that with like a business class, though? Couldn't we generate the same kind of?
And it was helpful for pharmacology, by the way. So so we tend to focus on organic chemistry, and maybe people say, oh, it was a waste of time, it was a toxic environment. And true, it was. I happen to like organic chemistry, but mostly because my professor was an East German who escaped to West Germany. He crossed the wall when it was still standing with nothing but the knapsack on his back. So I was very much, in admiration of his bravery, having myself come from that part of the world. But the point is that it teaches you a certain way of thinking. It teaches you to prioritize lots of information and form patterns. And then when we went on later on to biochem and pharmacology and pathophysiology, some of that, hopefully, preparation paid off. But to go back to your point, as somebody who did an MBA, I can tell you that I was absolutely surprised and pleasantly surprised that in the business school, there's really very few textbooks and there are very few dogmas. Like, yes, they have the frameworks, and of course, there are all these sorts of, various patterns and some of these hard sciences that one needs to learn, but all of it was case-based. Even in the quantitative sciences, you'd come to managerial accounting or financial accounting, you'll get a real case of a real corporation, and the professor is asking you what is going on here. So I think this is what's missing for us in medical education. Like, it happens later at the postgrad level, right? We all had residents, we all had fellows, we taught them, we're still teaching them, we speak for our professional societies, and this case-based education is really have become the dominant theme. But it has to come into the medical school level. It probably even has to come into the undergrad pre-medical curriculum, because that's what makes it relevant, right? On more levels than one. It's not just the exact sciences. It's also, how do you speak a language that the person understands? How do you culturally relate to different people, right? So that you can establish these relationships. This is beyond than just the exact science, and chemistry and such.
All right.
Donna, there is so much rote memorization that we have to do.
Well,
That's not about thinking. It's not about, it's just,
because of
Yeah,
AI and of all the machinery. And we've literally, I mean, in our days, we're dinosaurs. Like when we were younger, we used to use encyclopedias to look things up. And we had
They
to
made us
go
buy a
to the
Palm Pilot
library.
in my class that we never used. A Palm Pilot.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And we used to have to go to the library and check out an entire encyclopedia, et cetera, et cetera. But now people can literally get an answer in 2 seconds. And so again, I think, and I've been saying this for many years, that the role of physicians is evolving. So we have to really take a long and hard look at what defines our role in the most productive way nowadays. Like, how can we be of best help to patients and their ailments when they too can look things up, by the way? And I think that require, that's going to take a really long and nuanced discussion that, requires us to really dissect whether the same kind of curriculum is needed, or we need to take drastic steps. But it is for this, I'm looking at the time, and we were that excited. I think we made some great conversations and raised some great points. So thank you so much to everybody for joining us this time around. I can't wait for the next episode, and have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening.